Welcome back. We are so excited to move into our virtual make and take session. As I kind of said at the beginning, this is one of the most highlighted parts of our conference, and I can see that people are already saying like love the ag bites. So we're going to feature some of those coming right up. And how these sessions will work is we have 4 activities planned out, and each one of our staff members will take some time and do an activity, and then for 15 minutes, and then we'll move on. So we're going to start with acrostic poems. And one way to incorporate agriculture into your classroom is through poems. There's poem standards in almost all of the ELA. There's an English language arts tie-in in almost every grade level. And so for your webinar, or in your packet today or the digital packet, you received a download to our acrostic poems sheet. And we included a little sheet on the top that shows how it ties into a lot of high school lessons. And so with that, I wanted to start by sharing one of our favorite books here. And this is called Let Us Introduce You. It's poems about food. And so as you flip through the book, there's, all different kinds of poems are featured. But we kind of flipped through from popcorn to carrots and spaghetti. But when we get to the definition of carrots, this is called an acrostic poem, and what we kind of wanted to talk about today. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly. So what is an acrostic poem? An acrostic poem is a structured poem in which the first letter of each line forms a word or a phrase vertically. So the poem can describe the subject, or it can tell a brief story about it. You guys all received this handout in your packets, and this is where we saw the definition of carrots, which is the poem that we just saw in the Let Us Introduce You book, and then also some prompts for some other different commodities that you can write poems about. So I have a couple examples for you. This one is lettuce. So loves the California climate, expanding its roots into the soil. The plant comes in a variety of shapes and sizes. Tall leafy greens, romaine and heads, unanimously one of the oldest vegetables, courtesy of Christopher Columbus's second voyage, and explored on the International Space Station. So you can see how all of those little facts talk about lettuce and describe the subject, which in this case is lettuce. One way, a resource that we tie with acrostic poems a lot is our fact and activity sheets. When we do this in person, I usually pass out the acrostic poem sheets and then also the fact sheets. And so I ask them to use one of the commodities that we have a fact sheet for, and then use the information in the fact sheet to create an acrostic poem. All of our fact sheets are also available online at learnaboutab.org. And so you can, during this webinar, you can pull those up if that's helpful. Oh yes, sorry, the book the title of the book is Let Us Introduce You, and it's poems all about food, and it has a variety of different poems in here. Okay, thank you for that comment. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to give you 5 minutes to write your own poem, and then I'm hoping that after you have your poem, you can share it in the chat. So we will start a timer right now for 5 minutes, and we will be right back at you to share our poems, and I'm going to write one too. Okay, so I don't know if that was quite 5 minutes, but we're going to come back because I also love asparagus. That's a really long word though, but I wanted to share one more example, and then we can if you guys want to type in the chat your poems, we would all love to hear them. But spinach is another example that we have. Salinas Valley produces the most in California. Popularity increased with the developments of canning and freezing. If left in cool temperatures, can be stored for 14 to 18 days. Native plant of the Middle East, an excellent source of antioxidant vitamins. Cool climates are what it prefers and has been enjoyed throughout the world for hundreds of years. So that's another example that you can do. I just wrote at the bottom where you can create your own, and I said, herbs harvested multiple times throughout the growing season, eaten as a part of different cultures' cuisines, requires heat to dry so it can be used for cooking, brings flavor to your favorite dishes. Shake, shake, shake. You can add herbs to butter. And so I got all of those facts from our fact and activity sheets. And if you go to the herb page, and I don't know how familiar you guys are with our fact and activity sheets, but they focus on 44 different commodities. The front side is all information about the commodity. And then on the back side, there's a graphic. It's different for each commodity, lesson ideas, fun facts, and then a lesson plan. And the lesson plan actually for herbs is making butter. So you can make butter and then add your favorite herbs when you write a poem about it. So we have flowers, flavorful, really sweet, undeniably delicious, intensely sour lemons, too many to choose just one. Oh, so these are really a fun way to include in poems into your classroom. So with that, I'm going to stop my screen share. And as I kind of said at the beginning, there's lots of different ways that you can incorporate them into their classroom, and almost every single grade has poem standards. So that's a great way, but another great way is through books. And I wanted to share just a little bit about a few of our favorite books. And our Imagine This story writing contest. So after you have your class write acrostic poems, you can also encourage them to write an Imagine This story writing contest story. The winner, we select one winner for each grade level, and those stories are published into a book and illustrated by high school art students, and the students get to come to Sacramento for a ceremony. This year it was at the state capitol. So you can kind of use the poems as an entry level into the Imagine This story writing contest. But books are another great way to meet some ELA standards and bring agricultural literacy into your classroom. And so another one of our favorite books is Tops and Bottoms, and it's a super cute story about a bear and a hare and how they try to partner for commodities, but it's cute. And we have a ag bite that actually goes with that, and it is number 8. And we're not going to do that one today, but it's aligned for kindergarten through 3rd grade. And it really helps students identify what part of the plant do we eat? Do we eat the top part? Do we eat the root? Do we eat the middle, like corn? So this is a great resource to, read a fun story about agriculture, learn a cool message, and then also learn about what parts of the plant that we eat and different plant parts. We have some of our favorite, I'm going to try and share my screen one more time just to show you. Those are just 2 books that we like and we use a lot at Ag in the Classroom, but on our website, we have even more books that are aligned. It's under Great Reads. So it's learnaboutag.org and then Great Reads. And we have our favorite books for elementary, middle, and high school students. And you can actually just purchase these books straight through our website. And they're great ways to connect that into your classroom. So I just want to check. Yeah, so I teach preschool and would love a book list that I can read. So hopefully maybe you can find one on our Great Reads that would be a good introduction into your classroom. We're constantly adding to that as well. I know we're a little bit behind. There's ones that we need to add, but it's a great place to start for books to include books into the classroom. Oh, the students love Tops and Bottoms. I love Tops and Bottoms too. Peas. Okay, so here's a poem. Peas in a pod, yummy, edible legume, a relative of chickpea beans and peanuts, so get some today. Peas. That's so cute, Carla. Great poems. What else do we have here? Small but mighty, essential to our growth. Everything seems to come from them. Delicious results, fun to watch grow. Seeds. So that was one of the prompts. That's great, Christy. Thank you for sharing. So that is Acrostic Poems. If there's no more questions, it is one of my favorite activities. I like to do it in person. This is the first time we tried to do it virtually, but in person, I usually pass out poster board and you get to work in groups and decorate it, and it's really interactive. So that's a fun way that you could bring it into your classroom also. But with that, I'm going to pass it back to Mandy, and she's going to do another STEM lesson for us.
All right. Before we move on, I didn't tell Mandy I was going to do this. I want to share one more resource on the website that has some great books. If you go to teacher resources and then you come down to Fresno Farms to You, and you click on that, it will take you to these newsletters, and they each have a different focus. So it's kind of hard to see because they're by month, but I think those are berries up there. So you can click on that, and then each month has a number of ag books at the end of the newsletter. So over here you can see there's 3 different books about berries. So if you like the book list thing and you are like, I even want more of those books, there are a number that are divided by different topics that you can find at each of these newsletters. So you can check that out too. Okay. Let me stop sharing the screen. Okay. Perfect. Okay, I get to share a lesson called Cruisin' with the Bruisin', and it's from one of our STEM units. I'm going to share it with you all. Okay, perfect. I think you should all be able to see the slideshow at this point. So this is from our STEM unit, and it's on the available through the lesson plans link on our website. And it's careers in food science, which I think is such a fun topic because especially with younger children, when you ask them about jobs that are related to agriculture, I feel like you hear a lot of the same careers. But this unit focuses on different careers in food that they might not even be familiar with. And there's 4 different lessons, and this one's focused on food packaging specialists, because this is actually a career that kids can pursue that they'll have a career where every day they get to go to work and come up with food packaging that appeals to consumers and keeps the product safe as it is transported. This whole unit, we actually have 2. There's one in for careers in food science, and there's one in for beef cattle production. And it really focuses on developing STEM abilities and while also helping students think critically about the world around them. And then it highlights different careers. This one is for food production. So the featured careers in this one are food scientists, food packaging specialist, which is the one we're looking at today, food transportation specialist, which would connect really well with the ports activity. And then the last one is food safety specialist. So if any of those sound interesting to you, you should look at the food scientist one. Is super fun, where they design their own trail mix and figure out the cost of creating it and how much they can market it for. And it's really a fun lesson. Okay, so here's some questions that you can ask your students, and if you want to answer them, feel free to. But you can bring in some different examples of specialized containers that you see often in the supermarket, and you can ask them, what do you see about these containers and how they are designed to protect produce? And just by walking through the supermarket, you can see the boxes that are stacked around the produce department have special are designed especially to protect them. And then you can also see that each of the individual things, like the clamshells that you might buy your berries in, are designed with a specific purpose in mind as well. Good. Sizing for transportation is an important one too. You might find out that packaging has different importance for different people along the supply chain. So for farmers, packaging is important because they have a brand to represent. They want their produce to be thought of well in the market. If you buy something and it's all moldy when you get it, that doesn't really say much for the company that you bought it from. The farmers also want to protect it so that there's not very much waste. They want the shipping costs to be cheaper so that they're able to make more profit off of what they're producing. For consumers, it can be a variety of things. I've noticed a movement in the last few years of trying to transition maybe from less attractive packaging to more environmentally friendly packaging. So that might be important to consumers. I think consumers also care a lot about the product quality though. We don't want to buy something that's going to bruise, once we get it home. And then another person along the supply chain are the transportation companies. What do they want? Somebody says sizing for transportation. Yes, they want things that can be compact and many things can go in one truck so that they can save on their transportation costs. They want to not have any damage along the way that they might be responsible for. So this is a good way for students to start thinking about, wow, packaging really is important for a lot of different reasons, depending on who you are along the supply chain. So for this lesson, the lesson is very extensive. So I just want to share that. And this is a very quick activity that we're going to show from it. So basically in the lesson, each student is going to design and test their own packaging prototype. And then after they design something, they're going to bring it to their group, and the group is going to decide based on a rubric that they're given, which package has the best design and durability for transporting produce. And then once they've settled on kind of the best design, they're going to work together to even improve that design. And then they're going to test it by, how fun is this? They're going to send it in the mail to themselves and see what it looks like when it gets there. So it's kind of a fun, hopefully it doesn't get lost in the mail, because that's going to be a stinky package somewhere along the way. So that's kind of the setup for the activity. And it has lots of worksheets. It takes the students step by step lots of consider the cost, how much does it cost to ship, put it on a scale, what does it weigh? So there, it really walks students through it, and the teacher too, to have this be a very project-based learning experience. So here are the different steps. One is there's lots of research before they get started. Then they do some sketching, a materials list and dimensions. They do aesthetics. How do they make it look good? And there's different parts of that, collect materials, and then they build a prototype. Okay, we don't have time for any of that. So today we're just gonna make one. So when you're doing it with your students, you'll do all those steps and it'll be really rich and robust. And today we're just gonna try to make something. So I think on your materials list, you had a number of different things like a container of some sort. I think you got packing material. Great, I see what you have now. So I'm gonna share. Oh, wait, we're not gonna do that one quite yet. Okay, I'm going to share what I have here. Okay, so here's my container. You've got all these pieces, so you can go ahead and get those out now. And then you need a piece of fruit. You can choose how daring you want to be. I would say if you want to be really daring, you know, put a pear or a banana in there. And if you're wanting to play it a little safe, you might want to get an apple. Like me, that's what I did. And then I brought, you know, a box from home, and I was thinking to myself, how would I try to ship an apple in the mail to myself to see what it looks like? So this morning after my kids ate their yogurt, I was like, oh, this yogurt container is such a great size for shipping something. And I noticed that it has a clear lid. And you've probably noticed in the supermarket that there's a lot of clear parts of packaging. And part of that is because they want to appeal to the consumer so that when they see it, they say, wow, that looks like a really delicious, not bruised apple in there. So hopefully that's what they find. So in the lesson, students can design their own. You can bring things like packing peanuts or newspaper. Oh, I'm realizing I should use the camera. Okay. I'm going to show with the camera. So follow that one. I mean, now. Maybe. Usually like this, yeah. Might have gone to sleep. Oh, yeah, that's what it is. I can show you like this. So what they might want to think about is I just drop mine in there and then I put the packaging stuff on top. Well, the problem with that is it won't protect the bottom very well. So you might encourage students as you're walking around the classroom and think, is that going to protect all the sides of your produce? It might not, it might. So right now, wherever you are at home, at school, whatever, you can work on packaging your produce item in a way that you think will help protect it. The problem is the more packaging you use, the more the bigger your produce gets, right? So that's another thing to think about when farmers are shipping things. Yeah, they probably aren't going to want to ship something that big for just an apple. But the goal of this activity is not necessarily for students to come up with like a brand new innovative way to package something, but it's for them to carefully consider all of the different aspects of packaging and what goes into it. It's not a simple thing to plan. Okay, so there's my apple. I covered it up and I have it in my container. And then you could have them put it in their, oh, here it is. Have them put it in their box. You can see that. And maybe I brought some of these air-filled bags, put that around. If you don't have those, they can take Ziplocs and you know, blow into them or whatever it is. See how it works. Okay, and then you're gonna close it up, tape it up, and see how it works. So there's a couple different steps to this. What you could do is you could drop it from like a high, like a ladder to see first, how did it endure that? And then once they look at the rubric, which is included in the lesson, and they check off all the different ways that they've tested their packaging, they're going to decide, okay, say mine gets selected. A group now is working on how can we refine this and actually make it better? What can we do? Maybe we need to add even more packaging on the inside. Maybe we need to, students will come up with all sorts of creative ideas that you've never even thought of. So you can think of all the different ways that that you can improve the packaging. At the very end, I'm going to share my screen one more time because there's one last slide here. At the very end, there's a reflection piece, which I love, and it gets students thinking about how maybe they would change it. And they get to talk about, what did the package look like when it arrived to us by mail? What did the fruit look like when it when it arrived to us by mail? There's a kind of ugly pear there. And then they get to reflect one more time, how would you improve the packaging? So those are the different steps that they can take. And it's a really, really fun in-depth lesson. I would say it's probably like a week-long project for your class, but it's really fun. It hits all the different standards. There's math involved, there's science involved, there's ELA as they're designing the package and coming up with the logo. So it really hits all the different subject matter as they're doing this activity. Okay, that's it for me. So I'm just going to check, make sure. Okay, looks like no questions there. And now Jennifer's coming on.
I love this. We're just sliding on over. How is everyone? It's still morning. I'm gonna actually have you guys like do some shoulder rolls because we're all behind a computer. So let's just do some shoulder rolls, and I'll introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Harrison with Ag in the Classroom, and I have yet another really fun way to bring agriculture into your classroom and actually think about it in a way that your students and yourself, you may have never thought about agriculture in this way. So we are still living in the Ag Bite world. So we're in here and we are doing linkums, and we're going to link, get it? Link a commodity such as like walnuts to a byproduct or a secondary product that those walnuts can supply. So you guys should have got your goodie bag, your Linkums goodie bag. So let's pull that out. And I think we're going to share a camera. What I want you to do is, and I'm going to see if there's any chatting going on here. You are going to take your raw commodities and you're going to make one row of them. So let's see how we do this. I have my walnut and I have my wool. Are we seeing this on the, I think we are. I think it's in a really good place. We have wool. We have wood. I want you to make one row of just the raw commodities. We have soybeans. Let me see if I can find mine. They're little. Okay, we have this round. Here we go. We have this round soybean. And we have corn. I feel like I'm forgetting one, but maybe not. Okay. And then, so, yep, there should be 5. So you have the 5 raw commodities, and then you are going to line up the byproducts. So we have a crayon here, and we have some lotion, and we have a piece of rayon, I guess I'll call it thread, string, and we have a packing peanut. Okay. Does everybody have all their commodities and their byproducts lined up on their table or their work surface? I hope so. So what we're going to do is we are going to link, thus linkums, the commodity to the byproduct. So I'm going to give you guys a few moments and you're going to match up. So where is this walnut? Where's this walnut ending up? Oh, and you know what? I forgot the sandpaper. That's over here. So where is this walnut ending up? Is it with this? How are these linked? So I want you to link the walnut, the wool, the wood, the soybeans, and the corn with its byproduct. And I will give you a few moments to do that. And let's see, it looks like there was a yes. So I think that people are doing this. All right, I'll give you a few more moments. And while you're doing that, I want to let you know, we actually have an entire What's Growing On student newspaper. It was the 19th edition. This entire paper is dedicated to byproducts. It's a really, really interesting topic, and it's going to have your students thinking about agriculture in a whole different way. Mindy and myself, we spoke at UC Davis recently, and we did this activity with students. I think they were seniors, and they were just blown away where different commodities end up in their byproducts. So, okay, let's start. Let's start with the walnuts. Does anybody, and you can put it in the chat, does anybody know the byproduct of this walnut? What byproduct is the walnut in your array of, somebody, I think I kind of gave it away. But you are correct, Carla. Sandpaper. So, of course, with a walnut, we think of the nut. We eat it. We put it in salads. We bake with it. but actually walnut shells are used, they're ground up and they are used for sandpaper. They're actually used in snow tires as well and can be found in some pet litter. So this walnut, I'm thinking about this walnut in a whole new way. So if you did not get that correct, like Carla, you can rearrange and figure out which raw commodity goes with which byproduct. So I'm going to give you a few more seconds. I'm just going to mix mine up. I will be really impressed if you guys get these completely correct. Okay, so should we move on? Did you match your commodity with your byproduct? I am going to now move on to wool. Does anybody know where, and if you've read your ag bites, you're going to get all these correct anyway, but does anybody know which byproduct wool? Oh yeah, there's another one. Here we go, Kathy, wool to lotion, exactly. So this activity, when students find out this information, they are really intrigued. And with the wool, you can actually feel the wool, rub it in between your hands, and you should feel some kind of oily or silky sensation. And yes, the lanolin from the wool is found in the lotion. It has to be a lotion that says lanolin based, just to be clear, not any old lotion, but yeah, the wool and the lanolin go together. Okay, any rearranging? Anybody need to rearrange their items? Let's move on to wood right here. Anybody guess what product the wood is found? It's probably yarn. Yep, rayon. Yep, absolutely. There are actually 5,000 different products that can be made from trees, and this is one of them. And I'm going to check my notes because this is something that I want to get right. Rayon is a silk-like fabric made from the cellulose acetate, which comes from wood pulp. So just linking these two things together is really interesting. And finally, you have a 50-50 chance. Let's start with the soybeans. So California does not grow a ton of soy, but they do. There is some, I think in the Sacramento Valley, soybeans are grown, but soy can be found in which of these in byproducts? Yeah, somebody has maybe already done our Lincoln activity, but yes, crayons. I think this is really interesting. When I think of soy, I think of tofu, but this type of crayon, the Prang brand, is made with soy. And it said that 1 acre of soybeans can actually be made into over 82,000 crayons. So that's just really, really interesting. And then finally, you have the corn and the packing peanut. So this is really interesting. Packing peanuts, if they look like a Cheeto, they are most likely biodegradable and could very well be made from corn. If they are not, like the packing peanuts that I think Mandy just had, they look a little different. And those are packing peanuts that are not made with corn. So that's one way to tell. A story I like, let's see. Yeah, so thank you. This packing peanut is not made with corn. This one is, and there is an Egg in the Classroom story that I love, where I think a teacher did this, and then one of her students, they got a package and it was full of packing peanuts, and luckily it was corn, but the student went and dumped all the packing peanuts in the swimming pool, maybe, to see if they really did dissolve, and they did. So I just think that's a funny story. But for students, this Ag Bite it says grades 6th through 8th. As I just mentioned, we went to UC Davis and we did this with seniors in college, and they were actually ag majors as well. And they were just blown away at what different commodities end up in different byproducts. I know we really think of food and we think of forests and trees that build our structures and whatnot, but there's so much more to agriculture than just what we're eating. And it's really important to remember that, because without agriculture, not only would you not have food, but you wouldn't have things like crayons and lotion and sandpaper, and the list goes on and on. And so just looping that connection back to your students on why agriculture is so important. And with that, do I have any questions? once again, how do we tell the difference in the peanuts? So if they look like a Cheeto, actually one of those, I know there's new like healthy Cheetos out in the store, and it kind of reminds me of those. If it looks more like a Cheeto puff, let's see, oh, that camera's off, okay. And it's just straight and linear, that is vegetable based or corn based. And then if it looks more like a kind of has a different shape, that may likely not be corn based. And on the note of corn, they use every piece of the corn for something else. The husk, it's not just the kernels. So corn is put into so many different things. So that's really cool too. Let's see, very cool lesson. I think so too. This is one of my favorites here. And I think that's it. That was quick and fast. And I hope you enjoyed the rolling the shoulders back. Do that again, because you have one more lesson. And this is actually, there's another question. Will all corn peanuts dissolve? You know, I've been told that if they are made with corn, they will dissolve. So yes. And this next lesson coming up is another one of my favorites. It's another one that we've actually done with college students, and it's really cool. So with that, I'm going to introduce again, Mindy.
Okay. So I loved the shoulder roll. Hopefully that was really helpful. And with the packing peanuts corn, we always we did it one time, and we had a teacher who did this with her class, and then the student went home and proceeded, they got a box in the mail with packing peanuts, and he proceeded to jump that whole box into the swimming pool. So we don't recommend that. Oh, I missed that, but yeah. But yes, okay. So as we move straight along, we are going to talk a little bit about apples and earth, which is our ag bite number 6. And so we are going to use an apple to discover just how much of the earth's surface is used to grow all of the food for the world's population. So we'll start with, on your materials list, it said to have an apple and a knife. And okay, so we are going to hold up this apple, and we're going to tell students that this entire apple represents the world's population. And so what you're going to do is you're going to slice your apple into fourths. Okay, and it's kind of hard to get it totally correct. So my cutting is not the best, so that's a disclaimer now. But okay, so you have your apple, and then you're going to set 3, so you've cut it into fourths, and you're going to set 3 of those. I'm going to try and find the most symmetrical one to work with. We'll set 3 of those aside, as those represent all of the water on the earth's surface. So approximately 75% of the earth's surface is covered in water, so we can't grow food where there's water. So we have our remaining fourth, and we're going to go ahead and cut that into half, okay? And we're going to set that aside as its area that is too uninhabited. So desert, swamps, area that's not conducive to growing food for our world's population. So we're going to set one of those aside. Then we have this piece left. And what we're going to do with this piece is we're going to cut it into fourths. Okay. And so we're going to set 3 of those fourths aside, as that's land that's too rocky, too wet, again, not conducive to growing food for the entire world's population. So are there any mathematicians in here that can tell me, if we set 3 of those aside, what this 1/4 piece of our apple is left? What percentage of the original apple do we have left? Anybody? You guys all on here? Okay, well, I'll answer for you. It's 1/32 of the original apple, but we can't grow food down to the core, right? So if you just peel back the skin of the apple, this is the topsoil. So this makes up the amount that we're able to grow for the entire world's population, grow food on, because we can't grow all the way down. So we can only use the topsoil. And so, what we love most about this activity is introducing the subject of sustainability. So, which leads me to what is sustainability? Sustainability is a really big word for, a 3rd through 5th grade student, which is what this lesson, as it's written, is aligned to. And so as it's aligned, it hits math and science standards for 3rd through 5th grade. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't fit into other subject areas. That's just where it's aligned to in Ag Bites. But what does the word sustainability mean? Well, we included on each of our What's Going On student newspapers, there's a definition, and we work really hard to make sure that these definitions would make sense to a child or to a student. And so we define sustainable as meeting the economic, social, and environmental needs of the present without compromising all of the needs of the future. So that's a hard definition for students to understand, but I think that doing an activity like Apples and Earth really brings it into perspective on start the conversation. Are farmers sustainable? What methods do farmers use to cover or to protect the land that they farm on? Because it's in their best interest to keep the farm and the land as strong as they can, because that's their livelihood. This is what they do. Farmers love the land. And so it's a really great discussion point to start that, but also what can students do to take care of the land, and what can they do as an individual, as a class, as a family? As Denise kind of shared earlier, we also include classroom activities and different ways that you can include this activity into other parts of your curriculum. So one of those is through an English language arts activity, and have students journal about what they learned and what they can do to be good stewards of the land. But then also visual and performing arts. So once you have your apple, one of my favorite parts about this activity is that, like, after you do it, you get a really great snack, and it's almost lunchtime. So that makes sense. But you can also take the apple and have students cut out shapes, and then using toothpicks or something else, make stamps and create it into an art project. Or you can also use, this is also one of my favorite parts of all of our resources, is that so many of them tie together, and you can use our byproducts edition of What's Growing On and learn about the different parts of an apple using the kind of what's inside of an apple. So I'm showing you guys that, but you can use the apple that you've already cut up to do this activity to identify where's the seed, what's the skin, what's the core. So this is another great way that you guys can explore different parts of agriculture using a lesson, but tying it in with other resources that we have. Let's see. The definition, the sustainable definition again? Yes, I can. Sustainable is meeting the economic, social, and environmental needs of the present without compromising the needs of the future. I can make this adaptable for preschoolers. That's great. I know that my daughter is in preschool, and she just did, they brought it home. They created kind of similar to what we have in What's Growing On, but they made their own diagram of apple parts. So I think it's definitely, you can use parts of this lesson and adapt it to preschool or harder or older kids. Perfect. Are there any more questions about this activity? We're running a few minutes early, but we're just going to roll straight through. We have a real treat for you guys next, as I mentioned, especially because it's lunchtime. But I would love to introduce Christine Torojan-Klistoff. She is Ag in the Classroom's 2020 Outstanding Educator of the Year, and also a National Ag in the Classroom Excellence in Teaching About Agriculture Award recipient. We are so proud of the work that Christine does, and we're so thankful to have her here with us today. She is a TK through 8th grade agricultural science teacher at Fairmont Elementary School in Fresno County. And today, you're gonna need to have some snacks close by. Hold on real quick, let me grab mine. Included in your packages, you received a cup of pears, of canned pears, dried pears, and then on your materials list was a fresh pear. So I don't know what you planned, but I mean, it's lunchtime and we get to have a snack. So it sounds great to me. So thank you so much for being with us today, Christine.
Well, I'm so excited to join you today. As I always say, I think that ag is one of the most important sciences that are left out of education. So I'd love to talk about it. And I do get to do the best part as eating, because I am kind of a specialist in that area. Oh, brother, but aren't we all? Anyway, so welcome. And like I said, I'm honored to be here. Yes, I was a 3rd grade teacher for a long time. And then I'm living the dream because because of California Ag in the classroom to be a full-time ag science teacher. I teach over 660 kids a week. It's crazy. If you want to hear that, contact me and I'll let you know how that dream could come true for you too. Anyway, let's get started on this delicious event. And also today is so important to be teaching about the standards, whether they're the NGSS standards, the social studies standards, the math standards, all those standards. But the tasting piece, of course, is a phenomenon, the hook that gets kids into, wanting to learn more about agriculture. Because I don't know about you, but my students are always starving, and the idea that there's something to eat, they are hooked and they're engaged in like nothing else. And so, and even if it's something they don't like, and I always tell them, so you might not like it, and that's the reality. And I said, you might not like this right now in your life, but later on it changes. Because I know that happened for me. There were certain things, there's no way I'm going to eat that. And now they're my favorite things. But I also believe if students are not exposed by tasting different produce, they might not ever try it. Exposure and tasting is the most important thing, because not only the standards, but this is a lifelong something for them, because if they don't try it, they might never try it. Even for myself, when I'm shopping and someone that loves produce so much, there'll be something new in the store because there's so many different varieties. It's like, maybe next time, but sometimes maybe I'll never be brave enough to try it. So for kids, it's really so important. And that also goes for careers. I think you could take almost any science standard and put an ag lens to it, and you can change the careers. Kids always say, what do you want to, when you tell them what do you want to be, it's generally the same thing. So at our school, we call them professional tags. So through every lesson we teach, there should be a professional tag so that it gives a meaning to the lesson. For me as an ag teacher, it gives them an idea of what's out there in the ag world, whether it is with the USDA, whether it is in fertilizers. There's so many, it's endless. There's thousands of careers out there. So I always keep in mind, when we teach a lesson, what does it take? What does it take? What is the college? What is the income? For my older kids, when I tell them the income of some of these careers, are like, oh my goodness, I would love to do that. But let's stick to our taste testing. So anyway, so first of all, when we look at fruit, and when we look at, or the produce that we're going to do, what do we think of first? We generally think of, let's look at the five senses, right? So how does it look? And then that ties into the conversation about the marketplace. People are so prone to look at what looks good is automatically going to taste good. And we know that's not true. But for kids, I'm always trying to express to them that, just because it looks good doesn't mean that it tastes good. So the smell of it, the feel of it, all those things. So today I am lucky enough to get a couple different kinds of pears. I have the Bosque pear and the June pear. I hope I pronounce it right. It's kind of fun when they said that you're going to do the tasting part today. And I took this one from Ag Bites in there, the tasty testing, and it was about pears. And I thought that's really cool because I'm from Fresno County, and pears are we do not really grow pears here. So I think it's always exciting to learn about something new. And we're going to talk about the freeze dried that she talked about, and the canned, and just for facts. And I will always go straight to our fact sheets, and the one on pears is excellent. But did you know, because we got to learn too, because I didn't know this, that 60% of all pears are canned. So this is the most popular, and this is not necessarily canned, but I'm sure there's another better term for that. And then 35% is from market, and only 5% is freeze dried, processed, or in baby food. So that's very interesting to me. So here we go. So we're going to try, if you just have these two, that's fine. And I get to try these. I'm sorry, that seems unfair, but in reality, when we test in class, that's what we would do. So I'm going to, first of all, I always cut them in half. When I do taste testing in my own classroom, I always have it cut up ahead of time. Something with a pear or apples, I do put a little lemon on it. I try not to put too much lemon because I don't want to alter the taste. And as we cut it in half, we want to observe, of course, the stem, the core, and the flesh, just great terminology that they need to know, the seed and the skin. And skin is a huge piece on all our things. I like citrus or something else that divides all the different produce, what makes that different in all of those. So I'm going to cut a piece of this, and also taking your time. In my life, and I'm sure a lot of educators, you just eat really fast. But when it comes to tasting in the classroom, taking the time. So I'll take a breath, slow down. I'm going to open our container here and our freeze dry. And let's give it a shot here. One of the things as we go along that they sell online, they're not very expensive. I think they're like $13, is this refracto meter, which tests sugar. And so usually if we're doing something that has sugar in it, you squeeze a little bit. For this one, it would be a great test to test between this and see how much sugar is in there. And those are easy to get online. Okay, here we go. Since you have the can, I will try the can. I know I have my spoon right here. There it is. And let's take a bite. Let's see what that tastes like. Wait a minute. I'm going to change that. I would rather have the fresh one first. I am so sorry. And so go ahead and taste it. And of course, it's washed and clean. The interesting thing about pears is the texture. There is no other produce like it. It makes it such a unique item. And so then if we were in a real class, I mean, with my students, I wish my students were here today. I think they wish they were here today, tasting the difference. But before I'm gonna call a timeout. Before we would even get to this, part, right now, as some educators, if you teach 5th grade or you teach 8th grade, next week is a state science testing. And every question on that state science test, it comes back to a graph of some sort. They have to analyze, write about it, read the graph, write about it, compare. What I did before COVID, we did an apple taste testing with different varieties of apples. And in my class, the students sit in groups of 4. And so every student did a survey of their favorite variety of apple. Before we even did it, they knew that one of them in the group was going to do a bar graph. One would do a pie chart, line graph, or a scatter plot graph. And so as they were testing, they went around and surveyed each student. They went back to their desk and table, and then they made their bar graph of what the favorite was for the class. And they had to be creative and think out of the box. Here's your graph. How do you make it clear, easy to read, and put some style to it, right? Okay, back to tasting. I'm so sorry. Here we go. Here's our other one. Please enjoy while I'm talking. I don't want to eat and chew. That's so terrible, but I do want to see what Mindy sent out here. What's interesting is they taste pretty close, and it doesn't taste very, very sweet. And I'm dying to try this freeze-dried pear, which I've never had before. Oh my goodness, that is delicious. Wow. Thank you for this. I mean, just that alone, I'll buy those of the future. But anyway, as you're tasting, there's just so much to do with this. And so right now I'd like to just talk about some of the things that you can do as as you're tasting them. One of them would be teaching about the pear itself and how they're picked when they are not ripened and ready to eat. So that's always a question on a lot of things, kind of like bananas, what's the best way to ripen them? Bananas just naturally ripen quickly, but sometimes you get home and you have these pears that are not ready to eat. So we would do a test in class. Would they ripen better in a paper bag? Would they ripen better in a plastic bag? Would they ripen better in the refrigerator with coolness, or outside in the dark, in the light? There are so many tests. And today we're just talking about pears, but that goes for other produce also. So it's so cool, all the things you can do and test easy to do in the classroom. So another one, so let's go back to the standards. What standards can you cover? So definitely matter, because if you think of your physical science standards, matter and interactions. So is this pear more of a solid, or is it more of a liquid, right? And so if you remember these, I had to pull this out of the cupboard, but we do that sometimes. There's one of these, the weight chart. That is a big math lesson. If we wanted to dehydrate and compare the liquid in there and dry it and see what the difference is, that is such a great matter lesson. Heredity, another one is heredity, inheritance, and variations of traits. Oh my goodness. When we talk about plants and variations of traits, when you're doing taste testing, that's a great way to introduce the variances, because of all the varieties, of all the things, that's really a big piece. I know we're staying on pears, but let's say we went in our area, citrus is such a big commodity. So earth science, the weather and climate, when we have a frost, it's devastating. And so most of us have the fan somewhere around our location of where we live. We can hear, oh my goodness, tonight it's going to be 32, 34, 26, and those fans run. And so with the citrus, we do a lot with earth science, the weather and climate, and we take a frostbit orange or mandarin, and we test those out. So also one more that comes to mind when I think of testing is the life science piece of structure and function. So the internal and external parts, the structure of any kind of produce. So, okay, and I know I'm talking fast. Slow down, just like my eating. Let's slow down. Anyway, some of the other things that you could do that carry on from testing, taste testing, besides the joy of the eating it and the trying it, back to that dehydration lesson, there's so many in that area. And if you need any of these lessons, please contact me on these, or if you go to Ag in the Classroom or the fact sheets, they're there too. Just the piece on the water. Water is such a big issue in California. And I just found out yesterday, I didn't know 75% of our brain is made up of water. And what does that have to do with pears? Well, it's like how much water is in a pear, and it's quite a bit. And please don't make fun. No wonder maybe I have a little too much water in the brain, and that's why. Anyway, let's get back. So something else that also, when it comes to the pear, did you know that if you took the pear seed and put it in some peat moss and put it in the refrigerator for a week or two, with a little dampness in a plastic bag, and sit it in there, if you pulled it out, that seed is ready to go to be replanted and a future tree of a pear. So can you imagine? And I'm sure if you've ever planted seeds with students, it doesn't matter the age level, they are always in awe of, wow, taking home a little plant to them, it's just like the biggest thing in the world. And it's like, it really matters to them. So if they know that they can take their taste test seed, put it in there and put it there and grow their own tree. I mean, a plant is one thing, but to have their own tree. And if you want to see more on that, if you YouTube it, there's so many wonderful videos on how to do that with your seed. Another great lesson from California Ag in the Classroom is DNA testing. So whichever commodity you're taste testing, you can take that lesson. You could take the DNA even from a pear and pull it out. It's not that difficult. I would suggest that's 5th grade and up. And so it just depends what grade level you're teaching at that time. So another thing I always like to do is to add a video to what I'm teaching. And one of my favorites, of course, is How It Grows with Nicole. She does incredible short 5-minute videos on different commodities, mostly all the commodities that we have on fact sheets. She has those in there. Some other things, if you like geography. So with the pears, I'm from Fresno Central, California. Pears are grown in the river pear and mountain pear districts. I didn't even know where that was. So I had to learn. So it's so exciting when we learn just like the kids learn about geography, and especially California. I really think kids really do not understand geography anymore. I think that's something that's a lost art. And California has it's such a beautiful state and has so many different areas and climates. And so I think that is big, that it'd be nice. And I don't do this, but I need to do this. My maps are behind me, but if we can mark out whichever tasting we did in a year, map out, this is the area. Cells. So cells, if you're a 6th grade teacher, 7th and 8th grade, cells are huge. Behind me this morning, the reason I'm in my classroom today is if you do have microscopes, checking out what that looks like. Never checked out a pear before. It is like the most beautiful crystal scene I've ever seen. It's like, I never knew that looked like that. So doing cells, microscopes, the skin compared to the flesh is incredible. I mean, just so exciting to see. And again, if you don't have microscopes, there is a grant for everything. We had written a grant and received these 13 amazing microscopes to use in the classroom. Also, when we talk about finance and ag business and money, pears take 5 to 7 years to grow. And I think kids and adults that don't know that think about from a farmer's perspective, okay, I'm going to grow something, but I'm not going to get an income for 5 to 7 years. That's a hard one to swallow, kind of thinking in those terms. Let me check the time. I'm so sorry. Okay. So that's an important piece. Again, about the ripening piece. Also, I'm so sorry. So also again, about ripening, that's a big one. So anyway, another piece that I think that people don't think of is, and it's very important, is the cost, right? The reality is it costs money to be able to do these taste testing. And as Mindy said about the grants for life, that's one of the things. If you write the grants, Mindy and Judy are amazing and give those grants out because they know how important that is. I mean, can you imagine writing one of those grants and being able to do that for 1 year in your classroom would be incredible. Another thing that I just learned recently, I was having a conversation with our physical education, wellness, nutrition person from our county office of education. And we were just talking about that. I said, taste testing is so important. Kids love it, but it costs a lot because, everything you have in the classroom, it comes out of your budget. And I know. And she goes, Christine, what are you talking about? She goes, we have funding for that. I said, how come I didn't know about it? She goes, well, you just have to ask. She said, what do you want to taste test? I said, well, I teach 600 kids. Cindy, think about that. She goes, doesn't matter. Give me the list. And so I think that she said that every county education office has a physical education, wellness, nutrition person. She was just contact that person. They will get it. So I gave her the list, and all these new things are coming because I always kind of pick and chose. Okay, let's see this is what we can do. And who knew that the money that they have grants just for that, because they realize how important that is. So if you contact your Office of Education for your county, that might be true also. And I guess if they don't, contact Cindy at Fresno. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, that is a big thing. But the grant writing is huge. I mean, yes, it takes time. Some are simpler than others, but it is so important. So I'm going to make sure that I covered everything. Also, when I'm teaching my lesson, I always go back to my DOK chart. And as I write my lessons, I make sure that our academic vocabulary is used in any way I can, whether it's a level 2 of just using the words compare, distinguish, to a level 3 question of difficulty, draw conclusions as we're taste testing, construct, and then a level 4 is always where we want to go to prove your answer. Prove. I know that sounds crazy and tasting when we're supposed to just enjoy. Sometimes we do, but apply the concepts that we've learned to something else. Writing up. Another thing is about writing up some kind of advertisement. If you look back in here, back to this one, had very good ideas about highlighting the criteria of writing a commercial for Pears. And I thought that was a great thing. Write an article for a consumer report. Research what it is to be a marketeer. So there was great ideas on here also. I always go back to that. One more thing before my time is up. I'm checking my time here. Also, one of the things that some teachers in California might not know about, we're so blessed by having different packing companies that are around in California, whatever the commodity strength are in different divisions of California. Our locally is called OK Produce. And what they do is they provide nutritional, they want their students in their area to be able to experience better food quality, better nutrition, and tie nutrition lessons to eating. So they provide produce at cost for students and schools to buy. And the cost is very low, even in these times. They give it to you at cost, and then you take it back to your school and you sell the produce to the families at such a low price that it's very affordable. And that way, all families have access to affordable eating, ability to eat healthy. So one of the courses that I teach is ag business, and I wanted my students to be able to be produce brokers. And so what they do is every week, that packing house, and I'm sure there's one in most communities out here in California, they give you a list of the cost and what they have at that time of year. I have the students choose what they want to sell, when they want to sell it, and the prices they want to sell. And they compete against other classes and they see what kind of profit they make. For me, I have whatever profit they make goes to that grade level and they get to keep it because I want it to be their ownership. Other years, I've also done it where they get to use the money as they want, or we put it back in the program. Parents love it because they can get a basket of strawberries for $1.50 right now. Bananas, at $1. I always compare the cost to Costco and other things like that. And so that is kind of a great thing that you could do with that. So I want to know what everyone's favorite was. Was it the freeze dried, or was it the canned processed pears? That's what we have today. And let me just check, see if there's anything else. If Mindy has any questions for me, I want to go over real quick and make sure that I covered everything. Another produce, if we're going to tasting day, one of the things someone I want to do a shout out to is teacher Kate's. If you're on Instagram, she is the most amazing test person. That she does it Tasty Tuesdays, Tuesday tasting, something like that. Every single week she does a tasting with her class. She is over the top. She is over the top when it comes to testing. And I would follow her. I follow her on Instagram. I was like, what's she testing this week? Because it's like a great show. I'm reading in the comments about the freeze dried. Really surprised me. Me too. I love it. I just love those. That is so good. And it's so fun to teach about different varieties. There are so many varieties, especially with those. Also, what was I going to say? One more thing that I wanted to talk about was, that nutrition lessons. We think that kids understand about nutrition, but there's so many units out there on nutrition.
Hi, Christine. This is Jennifer with Ag in the Classroom. Great job.
Oh, thank you.
One of the things I really love that you started with was when you said, have your students slow down when they're tasting. I think that's such a great message for society at large, because I know when I sit down at home or at work, I'm really quick and I just want to eat, but having them slow down and taste the food is excellent. So thank you. And there was one question somebody mentioned, you had a green document. They called it a doc chart. Can you reference where they would get that?
So if you look online, it's called Depth of Knowledge, DOK levels, which means when presenting a lesson or talking to kids, the level of difficulty of asking questions. Because sometimes when we're teaching and we're talking, we sometimes just use the basic level 1, which you would know, tell us about it, name this, label that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if we always ask at that level 1, we don't get much depth in our lessons. Level 2, it just gets level 2, still concepts. Level 3 is strategic thinking, and level 4 is extended thinking. So it should just be, if it's not under, if you just Google DOK levels, if it's not there, then I will send the link to Mindy and we'll get it out to you.
Wonderful.
So yes, because that's kind of, sometimes we forget that when we're putting our lessons together. Oh my goodness, I should have been more in depth. Also, I always the whiteboard. So before we even start with a tasting, always going to the whiteboard, asking kids questions and them writing it out. Writing is such a key for every grade level, or for the little ones, even drawing it out, because they want to eat so bad. You can ask them to do anything before that, and then they'll do whatever you want them to do before that comes out.
Wonderful. And we had one more question about the tool you use to test the sugar. We put it up there. I'm just wondering, how does your class, what do your students think of this tool? It's pretty cool.
Well,
what is it called? It's a refractometer.
It's called a refractometer.
Refractometer. Okay.
Refractometer. I'm sorry. It comes in a box like this, and they love it because they don't know, number one, it exists. And how I knew about it, you know, I grew up on we grew grapes to raisins. And so my dad didn't know when to harvest until most farmers, maybe they have more high techniques now, but you would just squeeze a grape on there and you would there was a certain level when it was time to pick grapes. So for a lot of ours, for a lot of different things that we taste, whether it's citrus or pears or apples, we test that, and they love the little gate. You look in it and it tells you the little gauge of how much sugar content is there. And that's really good when you can compare it with something that is, you know, how much sugar was in a processed produce over a fresh one.
That's fantastic. And that hands-on learning, I'm sure they love. Wonderful. And you did mention grants. I just want to quickly say that at Ag in the Classroom, we have a variety of grants. We have Literacy for Life grants. Those occur, I will be corrected if I'm wrong, but after the first of each year. And then we have our Taste and Teach grants. And then every month we have an e-newsletter you can subscribe, and we feature grants in there. So thank you for mentioning grants, but that's a great way to do some of these wonderful projects in the classroom is when you are awarded a grant.
Yes. And if I can bring these fact sheets up again, I know Mindy, everyone has kind of talked about them, but they are truly priceless because the ideas on the back are wonderful, but also just these themselves. I just think in California, if you're a teacher in California, the things they could do with these, whether they do it on their iPads or they make charts, because it covers all those things. It's kind of a big deal for me that they choose their commodity and they become a specialist in there. And one of the things at the end, and then they teach the class about their commodity, but one of the things at the end, they write to the advisory board of everyone, and every advisory board sends something back to your class. It's kind of like writing to Santa, but they write and they say, we're learning about whatever it is. And they always send a sample of whatever it is. And they're amazing, those advisory boards.
What a great idea. That is wonderful. And yeah, we love those fact sheets too. We use them ourselves all the time. And that is an extension of using the fact sheet, is have your students write to the advisory board. I love it. Thank you. Well, we have taken up a lot of your time. So I know you probably want a Saturday that you have something, something planned, I'm sure, but we thank you so much for being such a wonderful advocate of agriculture in the classroom.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And we are going to take just a 5-minute break. And when we come back, we are actually going to go on a field trip and meet a real life farmer growing not pears, but growing some other stuff. So you don't want to miss that. Give us